Hello, Ms. Recordia. Welcome to Film Fanatic Fridays. This is Rinae Cotton,
And I'm Iryna
and we're going to be talking, obviously, about film. And I was going to open up with talking about films that kind of transcend time, that seem to be popular throughout the years, no matter how old they are. One of the ones that definitely comes to my mind is Forrest Gump. And I think, like most everybody, or a lot of people have seen it. The main plot in the movie is Tom Hanks plays Forrest Gump, who is a child who's a little bit mentally challenged, and he has some setbacks, but those setbacks don't get in his way of doing things and doing important things. And the movie is one of the reasons why I really like the movie is because it just shows the ability to be able to achieve things and do things despite any disadvantages or any things that might be in your way. And it's overall like a really good movie, and it kind of like touches on a lot of subjects of just, like just not being accepted. Throughout the movie, he's kind of an outcast in a lot of areas and looked at as just weird and unusual. But despite all that, like, he does a lot of things throughout the movie. And like, for example, like I believe it was the Vietnam War in the movie. And he's in the Vietnam War, and he also has like his own shrimping business. He makes he has his own brand for t-shirts with a smiley face on it. And the movie just has like, it's a really good movie all around, just because it, he has so many setbacks, but yet at the same time, like, I kind of feel like it's also ironic because all of these things that he kind of like achieves, and things that like are really of importance, that have a lot of like value, like, he doesn't actually realize the importance of them. He just knows that he's just going through it. Mm-hmm. And he's just doing whatever he's supposed to be doing. And like, the running theme throughout the movie is he has the one friend, Jenny, who he's friends with his whole life, and like, Jenny's in and out of the movie, and despite all his setbacks, he still makes it through. And I think it just like speaks to all generations, like, no matter what you're going through or what your circumstances or obstacles are, there's always a different way to look at it, and there's always a different goal to be achieved, no matter what might be holding you back. What do you think of that?
I just standout moment from that film is when the boat crashes into that's all. It's a fantastic movie. The plot, just like you said, it shows how you can overcome whatever struggles you're going through. But that moment, just when he finally sees Lieutenant Dan in the boat, like, I'm pretty sure that was a contingency error, because they were.
Doesn't Lieutenant Dan say my legs?
Well, the boat was going. I think that it was leaving from it was going out of the frame from the. Well, that would be the right, and then it was coming back into frame from the left. And so just that moment when it finally crashes and he's like talking to Lieutenant Dan, it's like, what is going on? But I think it's going to be about 26 years old now for 2020.
Yeah, it came out in 94.
Yeah, premiered in, I believe, July. And I think that those lessons, it's just such a family, like, I would say it's family friendly, but there are obviously some really emotional parts of the movie, and it's just the idea of transcending time. It holds those lessons to like any time in history.
Yeah, like, I feel like there's a lot of like areas too where like you can connect with the character. Mm-hmm. Like, you can connect with Forrest, and you like like there's this emotional tie that you're like, wow, like look at all the stuff that like, he he goes through, and like it just shows you that like, I mean, despite things that could be in your way, there's always a way to get around things. And it's all about your attitude. And like there's so many obstacles and circumstances that he kind of faces in the movie, and he kind of doesn't let it get in his way. He just kind of just keeps on pushing through.
Yeah, it also speaks to, like, there are just some general things that he, as a person, it can relate to almost anyone. He, like, faces personal loss and just having those difficult relationships that you have with people. And that's something that everyone relates to. Like, we've all had loss in our lives, and the way that he overcomes that, you can either decide to make something good out of it and to have a better life from it and learn from it, or you can just like succumb to sadness and things like that.
Right.
But like, even you forget where he's running across the United States for like months on end, and that's something that,
and like all these people follow him. Like,
yeah,
like random people just start following him.
So symbolic.
I think the one part of the movie that really bothers me is Jenny's role in the movie. Like, I mean, despite his setbacks, like, I think the one part that you need to be made aware of is, like, I mean, he still is able to love. He still is able to have these feelings, despite these setbacks. Like, he still has feelings just like everybody else.
Yeah. I'd say I would agree with the fact that Jenny's role is kind of a little bit frustrating, because she just doesn't allow Forrest to have that love, but he continues loving anyway.
And then finally, when he does get a chance to love her, like, she basically dies. And he has the child to raise.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yes. But I feel like she does love him, but she just doesn't know how to love him.
Well, she has her own problems of her own, and she needs to figure that stuff out.
And when we come back, we are going to be talking about another movie that transcends time, which is Shawshank Redemption, and we will talk to you in a few short moments. There you go. Hello, welcome back. We are going to be talking about Shawshank Redemption, and Iryna, would you like to open the conversation?
I would love to. This movie I think the first time I watched it was junior year of high school, and I think I've seen it maybe like 4 times by now, and it's every single time I watch it, it just gets better. But it fits into that category of movies that transcend time, because it still has like a lasting message and a lasting impression on the audiences who have watched it. So a general overview of the plot of the movie is we're following Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, and he's sentenced to 2 life sentences for killing his wife and her lover, and he was then sent to Shawshank Prison. The problem is that he's the only one who knows he didn't do it. It gets later into that about the issues with that in the film, but Andy has to figure out how to redeem himself and he's trying to prove his innocence, but also he is remaining to himself for a large majority of the movie. But with the help of some of his friends, like Red, played by Morgan Freeman, who his role in the movie was just iconic. I mean, that's one of
Morgan Freeman's just great.
Yeah, I would say that's like a standout film of his that he had done. Why it transcends time is Shawshank Redemption is like a timeless tale of true friendship and other admirable virtues that speak to mature audiences about a topic that's otherwise not talked about very frequently, because this film is different than other things. When you think of the initial thought when I had heard about Shawshank Redemption in beginning of high school, maybe freshman year, was some kid talking about this prison, and I was like, oh, it's just going to be another crime drama or something like that. But
right.
it turned out to be something much more impactful because it's looking at this broken system of justice and what it means to redeem yourself in a way when the world has been against you. So here you are taking an innocent man and then sentencing him to, I think it was like 40 years or something that he was going to have to like 2 life sentences. However long that's going to be. But at one point in the movie, there are twists and turns that you don't expect, and Andy Dufresne is trying to overcome these obstacles of like harassment and this completely laissez-faire just it's not like it's a completely different system because they have rules instituted in this system, this prison system, but it's a very one-sided kind of system. So there's the prisoners who are just screamed at constantly by like the captain. There are very rude characters in the movie, Boggs to be one of them. And then there's like the warden Norton, who he's just kind of sitting there and he's saying like, be this good person, that this time in prison is a time of reflection, but he turns out to be a very corrupt person, and he's supposed to be this authority figure for people. You'd hope that you could rehabilitate these people to make them have a better life after the things that they've done, but then you realize that the warden is doing these very shady, like these sacrilegious things when he's saying, he hands Andy Dufresne a Bible at one point during the movie, and he's like, you should like read this and learn something from this.
Right. I think like it definitely, like you said, like there's a lot to be learned from the movie, and there's a lot of like Forrest Gump, there's a lot of life lessons that you could take from the movie, and just about, you know, how there are moments in a lot of people's lives where, you know, you kind of almost do have to redeem yourself, and sometimes you may have to prove yourself in certain situations, certain circumstances, and, you know, like life's not always fair, you know, life doesn't always go
Definitely
the way you
not.
think that like it's supposed to go. So it's kind of like it's a good movie that just makes us aware and reminds us that, like, you know, once again, it's a different obstacle than in Forrest Gump, but like it's a good reminder that, you know, even though the odds are against you, like you could still try to find ways to get over that hurdle, and try to find ways to put a, I guess, positive spin on it, and, you know, kind of, you know, be able to fight your battles. But, you know, even when, you know, life's not fair and it doesn't work out according to plan, you know, I mean, he was in prison.
He was in prison
innocent.
for 19 years.
Like he you know,
19-year sentence.
He was innocent, but like he had all these obstacles and all these things up against him. But, you know, I think like people can again relate to that because it's, you know, I mean, who doesn't ever face things that like just aren't fair, or have things happen that you're like, well, that really sucked.
That's what I had enjoyed about Andy Dufresne's character, was that he, throughout the entire thing, I would say throughout the entire thing, he stayed true to himself, because he's facing this massive sentence, and then he ends up serving for 19 years before eventually he is redeemed. And then he goes on to live his life how he chooses, because I'm not going to go into detail about the ending of the movie, but he chooses how he's going to live his life.
But, like, think about, like, even though despite, like, his circumstances of being in prison for 19 years, like, all the things that he did learn from that experience and things that he, you know, was able to carry with him, like, after that, the things that just he wouldn't have experienced had he not been in that position.
Yeah. I'm so happy that Brooks was a character, though. He was such a sweetheart. I just loved him with his bird. He was such a nice guy.
But yeah, again, that was a definitely one that transcends time as well, and people can again relate to that. It's relatable.
It holds many important lessons.
Absolutely, like at some point or another, people can relate to that in some way at some point in their life. Mm-hmm. We're about to go to a short break in a moment here. When we come back, we are going to be talking about film adaptations. So we look forward to speaking to you about that, and we will return in just a few moments. Welcome back to Film Fanatic Fridays, and we are going to open the conversation with film adaptations.
So, just like a basic understanding of what film adaptations are, it's kind of like when you take a book and then they're like transitioning it back onto the silver screen. So they're making a movie, and it can sometimes be based, like, depending on how the book is written, it could be based on a true story and then changed a little bit for like the sake of making a movie. But it's mostly like taking a book and then making it into a movie. But some that I really like, I would like to focus on are to begin with is Room. I had actually seen this about a year ago and then saw it again maybe a few months ago. It's starring Brie Larson. There's Joan Allen, William H. Macy. They're these iconic people, these iconic actors and actresses who are telling this beautiful story of how, like, it kind of relates to what I've been learning in philosophy as of right now, the allegory of the cave, where there's this child and his mother. The mother was kidnapped when she was about 17, so she had been like quarantined in this little shed that's like, I think, a maybe 10 by 10 space, and then the child is raised and he doesn't know any other world other than this 10 by 10 foot space. And so what they have in the room is very limited. There's like a basic kitchen. I think maybe like there was a toaster. His bed is inside this little closet, this cabinet. And then he has like very limited perceptions of the world. And so just that feeling of having a limited understanding of what the world could be. There's also like a little window at the top of the shed that sometimes when the sun will shine in, he wonders what is outside the room, and he just always refers to this place as room. So it was really heartbreaking for a good portion of the movie, because this child has been raised, unfortunately, in these horrible circumstances, and then about halfway through the movie, he and his mother escape, and just trying to get adjusted to that new life is just an incredible story. Then another example of a film adaptation is The Imitation Game, which was also based on a book, and then it's telling these true stories with these different characters about during World War II. They were trying to crack the Enigma code, and this story of personal sacrifices that they're making and these obstacles that they're trying to overcome, while also trying to balance the implications of cracking this code, and then they have to hide the fact that they cracked the code so that way the Germans don't find out and they can still gain that knowledge of what their next move is. And these movies kind of pertain to how accurate these events are based on the book, because people always have the argument of, is the movie ever as good as the book? And then people kind of differ between, well, no, the book was better.
I think it depends on what you actually like. I mean, some people enjoy reading as opposed to watching a movie. Sorry, I didn't mean to just cut you off. One movie that for me that kind of is the same. I believe it's considered a film adaptation. Is Rudy. If it wasn't a book, it's based on a true story. And it's about this kid who is wanting to play college football. He wants to play for Notre Dame, and he is basically told that he'll never get that opportunity. The family has always worked in, the like factories in town, and at first, like, you kind of think like the dad's just kind of like putting him down, like, you're never gonna be able to, do it. This is what we do. This is how we operate. And he faces like a lot of obstacles once again, like we've been talking about like, not being able to get in. He winds up getting into this Catholic university that's like right near Notre Dame, and all he wants to do is play football for Notre Dame. And in the end of the movie, or in the end of it, he's told that, like, he does eventually get to play for them, and then the coach at the time, I don't recall exactly why, but the coach wants to take him off the field for some reason or another, and everybody else on the team gets mad, and everybody starts putting their jerseys down and says, if Rudy's not playing, we're not playing. So they're basically forced to have him play, and in the end, he gets actually carried off the field because in the end of the movie, like, he makes the goal, and all the players actually wind up carrying him off of the field, and it's a really cool story.
How triumphant. Just a nice end to a good story, but it lends to the fact of how accurate are these events, and it comes down to, I think, how the story is told, because there's a line between too much drama and then not enough accuracy of the events, of whether it's a true story based on a book or just based on a book, period. But there's that line that can be crossed, that when you're making a movie, you want that wow factor that can only be shown like by kind of changing the events of what happens in the story.
Exactly. We're going to be getting ready to go to a break very shortly. When we come back, we're going to be talking about childhood actors that have succeeded into adulthood, and how they have still continued to be successful as adults. So we'll be talking about that when we come back. All right, thank you. Hello, welcome back to Misericordia, and we're talking about childhood actors who have succeeded into adulthood and have maintained their successful acting career. One of those that I wanted to talk about was Leonardo DiCaprio, who he's epic. I mean, who doesn't know Leonardo DiCaprio? And he's done a lot of different roles throughout his career as an actor. And I know one that stands out to me that I think he, as an adult anyway, that he was really good in was the Bourne movies, the Jason Bourne movies. I don't know if you're familiar with them. He played in Titanic too.
Yeah, I mean, going back just from his early career was like, I remember seeing the movie Romeo and Juliet after we had read the book.
Yes.
Well, after we read the play in high school, and then seeing that going back in time to seeing his early roles, And then, as you said, like Titanic to now modern day. He just finished up Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that I think he might be nominated for an Oscar. Don't quote me on that.
I believe so.
but just his career there were so many movies that I've seen by him that are just, it shows his progression like as an actor. And people were like really on specifically him, not on him, but they were really like rearing for him to get an Oscar. And I think it was finally with The Revenant that he finally got it. And I think that's just a really standout moment for him. You finally achieved that level. But some of the other ones that I can remember that stood out were like Shutter Island. That was a really good one because it kind of, he's a very like, I would say maybe drama focused and like these deep impactful movies. But
yeah, he does a lot of drama like movies.
He also can have like an air of there's like the professionalism, but then he also has like a goofy side too, I would say.
Yeah.
Because like I would say like just even the Catch Me If You Can with, I think that was with, yes, that was with Tom Hanks too. Just coming full circle here today.
Yeah, right.
But he has like that confidence, and it's just something that I think he's been in the business for so long now that it's just something he's kind of,
it's like an art. I mean,
yeah,
like once
he's perfected it.
He's really done a good job of enhancing his career and just being able to play some diverse roles.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I feel like he does really good in the serious roles. I haven't seen very many comical moments with him. Most of the movies I have seen have been more
The Great Gatsby.
The Great Gatsby. How many times have I seen that? Oh my gosh.
It's not a comedy, but it's
yeah, it's got a serious undertone to it, I'd say, but he's still like he's got that aloofness and a little like a less dramatic than say like Shutter Island or Inception. He was fantastic in that because Inception was just taking this kind of abstract idea and creating like a very beautiful piece from that.
Another childhood star that I kind of wanted to talk about was Natalie Portman. And she's pretty much come a long way. I mean, she basically started in the film industry back in '94, so it's been quite some time that she's been able to build herself and become better at her career. She appeared obviously like in the Star Wars episode.
Mm-hmm.
And
which actually, fascinating enough, I hadn't known this until fairly recently, that Keira Knightley, she would also step in for Natalie Portman's role as the Empress Queen, whatever you want to call her, in that episode. And I didn't actually realize that. I knew kind of growing up there was something off because I could tell that it wasn't exactly the same person, but I guess like under the makeup that they had to wear and all these like crazy alien dresses and
you can't,
all that.
yeah. They hide it well. Another childhood actor that's evolved from her childhood years was the one girl that played in Roseanne. That's something that I watched back when I was growing up. And
Sarah Gilbert.
Yeah, Sarah Gilbert. And she was kind of like the annoying sister in that show. And she's starred in a couple different movies. I know now they did a remake of the Roseanne show. Is it the Roseanne show it's called?
No, it's I think they she's now in the Connors on ABC.
Yeah. And I know it's quite different. I haven't seen a lot of it, a lot of the newer ones. I know I probably saw most of the older ones, but she definitely adapted as she grew up, and she has pretty much remained the same. I think.
I like compared to, I'd say, Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm not as knowledgeable with Sarah Gilbert as like you said, Leonardo DiCaprio or Natalie Portman, but like I can tell there's been a clear progression for someone like Natalie Portman or Leonardo DiCaprio, where she began in '94 with Leon the Professional, and now she's like come to these great films like the Thor, V for Vendetta. Black Swan was a great standout for her. That was really
that was
impactful.
A good movie. Yes.
Really impactful for her.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot of her movies. Like, I'm more familiar with her as a childhood actor, but I do know she's also done some talk shows too, actually, in between, like on the side as well. Yeah. I think it was The View, maybe.
I think it's just been that great time of kind of progressing your career. And
we're about to go to break here. When we come back, we are going to talk about the Oscar predictions and the best pictures of the year. Predictions of the year. Hi, and welcome back. Right now, we're going to discuss the Oscars and some of the lead movies, or the movies that are nominated, one of which is Little Women. And it's based kind of going back to like the 1860s and about these three sisters that kind of like look back on their childhood and see all these key points that kind of stand out that make them into the women that they eventually do become. And throughout the movie, the struggles that they face and the perseverance that they have to just keep on kind of like pushing through. And I think it kind of like speaks a lot about like, how women have had to face different adversities in society, even obviously back then, and not so much maybe as much now, but it speaks to, how we've had to kind of like fight for our spot, I guess, like, you know what I mean? And to be able to like stand up and, like we make a difference. Like we have our own minds. We can think for ourselves. Like how many women now like have their own careers, have their own things that they, do. And I don't think if it wasn't for women like this, like around this time, that, maybe we wouldn't be as far as we are today.
I'd say that movie is definitely a standout one for this specific category in the Oscars. Best motion picture of the year is obviously like the one that everyone like really like aspires to get at some point. But I think that I had seen the Little Women, this recent one, not the one with Winona Ryder.
Yeah, I saw the old one.
So it's a great story of, like you said, perseverance and overcoming those odds of when life knocks you down, or when you have trouble with relationships with different people that what you're going to do with those problems is going to separate you from the rest. So you can either go one way or the other, or honestly do nothing. Like, so I think that's definitely a good movie to be watching out for.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other movies up and coming was The Joker, and that starred Joaquin Phoenix, who plays Arthur Fleck. And basically, like, the movie is like about like kind of him being a joke almost. Like he wants to be the stand-up comedian, and like he's like basically like the laughingstock, and nobody really takes him seriously. And it's pretty much made known throughout the movie that like he didn't get the attention that he should have growing up, or and also from like those around him, like everybody just kind of had this like just negative attitude, and you know, everything kind of seemed to happen in a downward spiral for him. And like at one point in the movie, like they're like rioting and like
just absolute mayhem.
Yeah, and
everywhere.
then like it's crazy how it kind of goes from like they're rioting, and then it's like his character, like the Joker, is what opens up Batman or whatever. Like it introduces Batman, and then like in the end of the movie, like it turns out like he's really like in an insane asylum, and you know, speaking to a psychiatrist.
I would say it's. I've seen over the other past award shows that have already gone. So like the SAG Awards, Joaquin was presented with an award. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he's done such a great job of encapsulating this attitude of this character that it's complex to. There have been so many Jokers over the year. I mean, like back from when it was the
Heath Ledger, right?
Well, there was Heath Ledger, but then there's also like the back when it was part of a TV series, and the Jokers. I think there was Jack Nicholson at one point in one of the movies. Right. What an interesting to go from like someone like Jack Nicholson to then Joaquin had also been thanking and like recognizing the past Jokers before him, and I think what he's done differently, especially in this film, because it's unlike any origin story of a superhero or villain character that has been done before, that it's just like this center focus on the Joker, which has been such a staple in so many different arenas of the superhero realm, that he's taken it to an extraordinary level.
Yeah, it was just totally different like spin on it, definitely. Not something you like would have expected, really.
I think that's why it's got like it's definitely in the running for Best Picture, and there's a good reason why.
Yeah. So like that was that was one of the movies that, or two of them, I'm sorry, so far that I was looking at that is up and coming. And then another one was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's supposed to be based in 1969 about these two prior big movie stars who were once big, and now like they're not so big anymore.
Yeah. They get in a lot of tricky situations, a lot of trouble.
Yeah, like they, you know, but they seem to kind of like get along well. Like they seem to like, despite their differences in personalities, they kind of like work well together. And I actually didn't really see this movie. I'm just kind of like going off of what I know about it. But basically, like, you know, they have to conquer this moment where like, or be in this moment where they're just no longer the big stars anymore.
So there's definitely a lot of great options for this category of Best Motion Picture of the Year. The Oscars are coming up pretty soon, so I couldn't imagine what those people who are in the running right now, they're just like on the edge of their seats.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. We are just about to take a break here, and when we come back, we are going to be talking about, in continuation with the Oscar predictions and the achievements in directing. We will return in just a few moments. Welcome back. We're going to continue the conversation in regards to the Oscar predictions. And did you want to say some things about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to be focusing on achievement in directing, which this is like also another high, like top tier award that is awarded at the Oscars. So Best Director, I had actually found a interesting article done by the New Yorker about why should there be a distinction between Best Picture and then also Best Director, because the argument is that you would kind of think that's synonymous, where the Best Director directs the best film of the year.
Right.
But other people have some other things to say about that. To begin with this year's Oscar nominations for that category, we've got The Irishman with Martin Scorsese, Joker, Todd Phillips, 1917, Sam Mendes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Quentin Tarantino, and Parasite by Bong Joon-ho. Who, there were just some standout ones for this category to begin with. I mean, Quentin Tarantino and his films, like other popular ones that he's done, it's like obviously Pulp Fiction. And so these standout names, you get surprised because there are like the I'd say alumni of these these categories. They've been in the business for several years now compared to some other people who you might not have heard about before. Another one is like Martin Scorsese with The Irishman. The thing that is with these films is that, like with The Irishman, I think it went, I know, at least up to 3 hours long. It might be longer than that, and it's on Netflix. It's a lot. It's a lot in that movie. There's a lot that happens with that. I would say I'm high-key salty about this year's nominations, because they're, like the New Yorker article had brought up, just for reference, the first picture that's on this article is of Greta Gerwig working on the set of Lady Bird. And she also then directed, obviously, the Little Women that's up for nomination for a bunch of different categories this year in the Oscars. But just being overshadowed, I wanted to, by analyzing this specific category, understand the criteria of what it takes to be deemed Best Director. But it's kind of an understanding of how the film industry works, because there's like the producers, screenwriters, directors, blah blah blah, and there's certain roles that the producers do that the directors might not do. The producers are definitely in charge of like funding and making sure everyone's job is being done correctly. And how this New Yorker article had been talking about this topic is that the directors also have they have to like go out and make those connections, and they have like all kind the roles.
The team, I guess.
Yeah, they have all those roles of being a producer without always necessarily like doing them. So
like it's like a side job.
Yeah, well,
kind of.
I would say I'm like frustrated that there are some movies that are being nominated for this category instead of others, when I think they've told a fantastic story. Maybe I'm just focusing on the wrong aspects of the film, but I remember at one point there was like, I think there's only been 5 women in the entire history of the Oscars, which it's a 92nd year this year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
5 women have been nominated for Best Director, and only one of them have won, which was Catherine Bigelow. And I actually remember that was in, I believe, 2010. She had been nominated, and Catherine Bigelow was, I can't remember offhand what the movie was that she had been nominated for, but Barbra Streisand had been introducing the award, and she had made some comments about whether this year could be the year that a woman wins the first Best Director award. And I was just stunned when I learned the fact that when Catherine Bigelow had finally been announced that she won Best Director, that she was the first woman to do it.
I didn't even realize that it was that low. I never really took that into consideration.
Yeah, and at that point, I think it would have been then, I guess, the 82nd year, and that was finally the year that a woman had won Best Director. But the article also just goes in depth greatly about how the criteria of what it takes to set apart winning Best Director and then Best Picture. So it kind of works together that we've been talking about like we had been talking about previously, the Best Film of the Year, Best Motion Picture of the Year, in tandem with the achievement in directing.
Each of them like have their own role, and like I guess you don't always realize like what actually goes into all of it, like in each person's individual role and aspect and what their job entails and what they have to do. So I think some of them are undercredited, if I could say that, and aren't given enough credit. Underappreciated, yeah, and some not given enough credit.
As the article goes on, they had been analyzing also on a year-by-year basis of how the results of the Best Picture compared with the results of the Best Director. And it closely coincides, but then there are also some variations where one year the director of so-and-so movie didn't win the Best Director or Best Picture. But also an important aspect of this thing is that the producers typically are presented for the Best Picture, whereas directors obviously win the Best Director. It's just that like those slight differences that make the difference. But we're going to be tune in for next week as we continue our discussion on the Oscars as they get nearer. It's premiering on February 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on ABC if you'd like to watch, as well as we're going to be talking about more fun film topics. This is Iryna Vanderbeek.
And this is Rinae Cotton, and
we're signing out for Film Fanatic Fridays.
We will talk to you next week.
Have a great weekend, everyone.